Tonight on Reporting Scotland. After the storm, travel disruption and the clear-up following ex-Hurricane Ophelia. An auction fails to sell a ship which has been detained in Aberdeen Harbour for nearly 18 months with her crew unpaid.
We wanted to see some bids going on into the hall, but for some reason nobody put in any bid. That was shocking for us, and in a way it was also embarrassing.
Also on the programme, who will care? Almost half of social care providers say they're having difficulty recruiting the right staff. We're in Germany with Celtic ahead of their Champions League match against Bayern Munich. And they've kept dancing. We meet the entertainers of yesteryear, including this 85-year-old for whom age is no barrier to the stage. Good evening. There's been disruption to rail and ferry services across Scotland in the wake of Storm Ophelia. A ship detained at Aberdeen Harbour for more than a year because its crew has not been paid has been withdrawn from auction. BBC Scotland has learned a report into an oil spill from a BP platform off Shetland has been submitted to prosecutors. A diver has died following an accident in Scapa Flow in Orkney. The UK government is being urged to pull the plug on controversial plans to cut the number of MPs. The opposition parties have made the joint call as the Boundary Commission publishes its latest proposals, which include reducing the number of Scots MPs by 6. Here's our political correspondent, Andrew Kerr.
The pace of politics is speeding up with referendums and elections. But there's one proposal that's plodding on, suggested by the former Prime Minister David Cameron. He wanted to cut the cost of politics by reducing MPs from 650 to 600. That's 6 fewer in Scotland. What are the views on that?
It's a big gravy train for a lot of them. They're career politicians. The less is more.
I don't think it would make that much difference, no. Let's keep it as it is.
No, I think it's a good idea. Hopefully it's not going to affect how the country's actually run though, so...
The Boundary Commission has released their latest revised proposals on cutting MPs after their first consultation.
In light of that, we've made a number of changes, some of them quite minor, some of them seemingly minor but have had lots of knock-on effects.
They now want to hear from you about their latest proposals. They've been fine-tuning these maps. Glasgow still goes from 7 MPs to 6. In the Highlands, there would be 3 massive constituencies, resulting in the SNP's Westminster leader battling with another SNP MP for the seat. In the North East, the Conservatives would also be fighting for seat selection, and after a local campaign, the Commission agreed that Banchory should remain in Deeside. And in the capital, we can see the Edinburgh South seat of Labour's Ian Murray is being redrawn. Would he be in the new Southside constituency or turn to Edinburgh East to face the SNP's Tommy Shepherd? Well, Mr Shepherd and the SNP, along with the other opposition parties, want this abandoned.
And this is completely a step in the wrong direction. There's no support for it in Parliament, there's no support for it in the country, and it should be scrapped.
The government really themselves seem to be saying now that they don't actually want it to happen. They should pull the plug on this.
The SNP are likely to suffer most from the changes, the Conservatives profiting in the UK. Labour are suspicious.
It's been claimed to be held on financial grounds, but the Paymaster General has clearly set out the fact that there is no saving to payroll. So therefore you have to question what is the motivation at this time.
The Constitution Minister said a boundary review is needed to ensure fair and equal representation for the voting public across the United Kingdom by the next general election. But this might never happen.
There isn't a majority in the House of Commons for cutting the size of the Commons, and given the current parliamentary arithmetic, it seems unlikely that these proposals will go through.
Whatever the case, the Boundary Commissioners say they'll keep working until they're told to stop. Andrew Kerr, Reporting Scotland.
An investigation is underway after a woman died in a house fire in Aberdeen. A man who killed a friend in what was described as a cold-blooded, premeditated murder has been told he must serve at least 22 years behind bars. There was an increase in the number of people in Scotland who died last winter. Official figures say that almost 21,000 deaths were registered between last December and March this year. Almost half of providers of social care services, including care homes and support in the community, are facing difficulty recruiting the right staff. A report from the watchdog, the Care Inspectorate, says more than a third of staff vacancies across the sector are unfilled. Well, our social affairs correspondent, Rival Alderson, is here. So, Rival, do we know what has caused this particular problem?
Well, it's a very complex situation, Jackie, and this report covers all aspects of social care, from housing support services, care at home, residential care, and indeed children and young people's services. And it was commissioned to try to sort out where the problems were geographically and in which sectors, and how to overcome them, whether there's any good practice that could be employed elsewhere. And we should say at this point that the Care Commission says that 80% of care services in Scotland are rated either good, very good or excellent. But I suppose to answer your question, it's people living longer and also the expansion of childcare services and early learning services, which mean that we need more people in this sector, but the demand isn't being met.
Well, one of the biggest things that care services say is that it's hard to find people with the right experience. So it's important that we attract people into care in Scotland that have experience and the right values. So it's not just about getting numbers into jobs, it's about getting the right people into jobs that can really provide good quality care and support to older people, to younger people, and to people's relatives and loved ones.
Now, we know, Rival, that many of those working in the care sector are EU nationals. Is this part of the problem?
Well, the survey was carried out in 2016. The vote to leave the European Union was in the middle of last year. So it's too early to say whether there has been any significant effect. We'll have to wait for the result of the survey next year of the 2,600 or so care establishments in Scotland. But what we'll also have to look at, because we do know, as you say, that there are many EU nationals working in the care sector, we'll have to see whether they think it's worth their while continuing. They'll be worried about what's going to happen, because the pounds that they're sending home, if they're sending money home, has been declining in value with the fall in the pound, and they'll have to decide whether it's worth their while staying and continuing to do this vital work.
Rival Alderson, thank you very much. The former project director for Edinburgh's trams has told a public inquiry he didn't think the council was 100% behind the project. Matthew Cross says the fact that some councillors didn't want the tram works led to a cautious and risk-averse approach, which contributed to delays. Lisa Summers reports.
Matthew Cross managed the trams project for Tye between 2007 and 2008. He described it as a time when there was much uncertainty about its future. A newly elected SNP government wanted to see the trams scrapped, and councillors were nervous and passive.
Half of the council, I'm sure, didn't want the tramway, and maybe half the council did want the tramway, and there wasn't universal support. And the sponsor needs to be 100% backing its project management company, and I didn't sense that was ever the case.
He described building a tram network in an ancient city as complex and challenging, even more so than something like high-speed rail. In Edinburgh, a decision was made to have one set of contractors design the network and another build it. It added a layer of complexity to contract negotiations, with time all the while slipping away.
There was a distinct risk that the project could be closed down. And the good people of Edinburgh, and obviously all the people on the tram team, didn't want the project cancelled. It was fundamentally a good project, and we had to kind of press on with it.
Against this backdrop, Matthew Cross went to Germany with the chief executive of Tye to negotiate a crucial deal for the tram's construction to begin. He told the inquiry it was difficult negotiating, but that they believed they could get the contractor to take on much of the risk.
They were playing a game, and they carried on playing it, as I understand, from until the deal was signed in May, and they were quite ruthless.
Councillors have told the inquiry they believed the deal was a fixed cost one when they later approved it. We know now that this was far from the case. Lisa Summers reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
3 men have been burned after a corrosive substance was thrown at them. Sport now, and Celtic have arrived in Germany ahead of tomorrow night's Champions League match with Bayern Munich. Now, they may be 85, 90 and 94 years young, but three dancers who first appeared on the Edinburgh stage when variety theatre was at its height are back dancing again. And that is Reporting Scotland.